Hello again, everybody. Welcome once again to another episode of the Tigers Baseball Podcast, episode number 131 in this journey that is the Tigers Baseball Podcast, the fourth season of the podcast. Okay, I just needed to see if that was picking it up. I have an announcement about the show later on in the show, about the podcast later on in the podcast, and I have all sorts of things to talk about. Well, not really, actually. So this is the last episode of season 4. This is going to be episode 25 of season 4. The way I do this is when there is a change in seasons. So right now, the off season is still going. It's still it's not the new season yet. The new season starts when spring training starts, which is on Wednesday. Pitchers and catchers finally report on Wednesday, February 12th. That's 3 days from today. I am very happy about this. We will have spring training Grapefruit League baseball on February 22nd. Tigers hosting the Phillies. The Phillies, who will probably still be hungover from the Super Bowl victory celebration that is about to commence in the city of Booing Santa Claus in just a few moments, as the Eagles are about to win the Super Bowl, spoiling the Chiefs' bid for a three-peat. But we're not going to talk about football because this isn't a football podcast. This is a baseball podcast, and the Tigers did some things. They needed to bring some more depth to the bullpen. I would have liked to have seen them get Tanner Scott. He went to the Dodgers. I would have liked to see them get Kirby Yates. He went to the Dodgers. I would have liked to have seen them get Kyle Finnegan. He's still unsigned. I would have liked to have seen them get a couple of other names that were out there. But they went with Tommy Kahnle. And you know what? Tommy Kahnle is a serviceable guy. He's all right. He does what he needs to do. He throws a ton of changeups. Don't look now, but he just threw another one. But, there's not... They sat there and said in the offseason, and okay, the Tigers didn't outright say this, but my thought process is, and maybe it's wrong, but my thought process is, if you are a radio announcer for a team, and you make a statement in such a way that makes it sound like you know what you're talking about, then that statement actually is coming from the team. You are hired by this team. The Tigers hire and fire their broadcasters. Whether it's for FanDuel Sports, whether it's for the Tigers radio network, they're Tigers employees. So when those employees say things, I take it as that's the team saying things. Dan Dickerson sat on the Tiger Talk show back in December, just before the winter meetings, and specifically said the Tigers want to get more swing and miss in their bullpen. All right. That tells me that Scott Harris, Jeff Greenberg, and AJ Hinch, one of the three, if not all three, told Dan Dickerson, hey, we want to get more swing and miss in the bullpen. That's what we're looking for at the winter meetings. So they get Tommy Kahnle. Again, there were other options out there that I would have liked to have seen them get. They're either signed already or Detroit has not, to my knowledge, made them an offer. Kyle Finnegan's still out there as far as I know. He should be in a Tigers uniform. But Tommy Kahnle is, and we're going to be happy about that. He just threw another changeup, just so you know. Now, on to a subject that everybody has been talking about, and I keep... Yeah, you know what? We'll wait on that. What the Tigers did last week, they re-signed Jack Flaherty and designated Mason Englert for assignment. Now, I'm sad to see Englert go. They also traded Alex Faedo to Tampa for a minor league catcher. But they had to designate Alex Faedo for assignment because they signed Kahnle. And I hate to see Faedo go as well. But when you're at this point as a baseball team, you have to add by subtracting sometimes. And sometimes you have to make difficult decisions in letting players go that you really like. You know, I didn't want to see the Tigers let Austin Jackson go, but they got David Price in return. That worked out pretty well for them. You know, I'm kind of a sentimentalist when it comes to this stuff, because when you grow up with these players, when you watch these players grow up, I watched Alex Faedo back when he was pitching in Florida in the College World Series. And then when he was drafted by the Tigers, I was thrilled. And then I watched him at AA Erie, and I watched him at AAA Toledo, and watched him in Detroit. And so, you know, you kind of get a connection with these players. And it's the same way with Mason Englert. You know, we watched him survive the Rule 5 draft. And what I mean by that is he came over from Texas as a Rule 5 pickup back in 2023. And he managed to stay the whole year. Pitchers don't generally do that. See Reed Garrett. See Will Vest. Will Vest was a Rule 5 draft pick of the Seattle Mariners a couple of years ago. He couldn't stick with them, so they had to offer him back to Detroit for $50,000. And Detroit was like, yeah, we'll take that. Thank you. You know, Reed Garrett was a Rule 5 pick out of the Texas Rangers. He couldn't stick up in Detroit back in 2018, I believe it was. Might have been 2019. But at the end of the day, he still couldn't stick with the Tigers. Went back to Texas and is now who knows where. But my point is, they had to designate Mason Englert for assignment because of signing Jack Flaherty. And a lot of times you have to let go of guys that you really like, but you got to do it for the good of the team. And this is for the good of the team. Jack Flaherty is going to make $25 million this year, an additional $10 million next year with a player option. So if he comes back next year, he's making $10 million. However, if he makes 15 starts this year, then it goes up to $20 million next year, which is still money in the bank for the Tigers. Because let's say he opts out and Detroit makes him a qualifying offer and he takes that qualifying offer. You know what Walker Buehler's qualifying offer was? $21.05 million. You want to know what Nick Martinez's qualifying offer was? $21.05 million. Nick Pavetta, $21.05 million. All of these guys had $21.05 million qualifying offers this year. So even if Detroit, he opts in next year at $20 million, he's making less than the qualifying offer. And if he does opt out and doesn't take the qualifying offer, somebody signs him, you get a draft pick, a comp draft pick. So it's a good signing for Detroit. It's a good contract for both sides. Happy to see Jack back. And that rotation looks really strong with Skubal, Flaherty, Olsen. Take your pick: Jackson Jobe, Casey Mize, Kader Montero, and Alex Cobb. Alex Cobb is your fifth. I don't think Jackson Jobe makes it up to the big leagues right away. I think there's still some work that he needs to do. But you know what? If he's the fourth starter for the Tigers, or even the fifth starter for the Tigers, he's got a chance to really work on some stuff at the big league level and develop the way he should. So who knows? It all depends on what he does this spring. So, all right, now on to the elephant in the room. And the elephant is named Alex Bregman. Now, I'm saying this tonight. This podcast is being recorded Sunday, February 9th. It is 10:22 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. By the time you guys see this on your YouTube notifications, probably tomorrow, this could change. But I doubt it. Folks, don't get your hopes set on it, on Alex Bregman. I laud Evan Petzold for his tenacity. I laud Jeff Seidel for his writing an open letter in his column to Alex Bregman in the Detroit Free Press. I laud, like I said, Evan Petzold saying, oh, well, Alex Bregman's going to sign by the end of the week, blah, 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 blah. Alex Bregman is not signing with the Detroit Tigers, folks. He's just not. Because in order for him to sign with the Detroit Tigers, Chris Ilitch is going to have to open up his wallet for $180 million over 7 years, or over 6 years, I'm sorry, or 210 over 7. And he's just not going to do it. He's too tight-fisted to do it. Chris Ilitch didn't want to spend $24 million a year on Javi Baez. He didn't want to sign him to a 6-year, $140 million deal. Al Avila convinced him to do it. See, say what you want about Al Avila and Dave Dombrowski, but they knew what it took to win in Detroit. Al Avila couldn't get it done because he had an owner that wouldn't let him do it. Al Avila was slow on the uptake when it came to analytics as well, and he couldn't do trades worth a hoot. He was constantly getting fleeced in trades. But when it came to free agency, he learned from Dave Dombrowski, if you want a player to come play in Detroit, you overpay him. The market says 6 years, 162, or, 5 years at 150. You give him 7 years at 180. Because that's what it's going to take. Or you give him 7 years at 210, or 7 years at 245. Because that's what it's going to take. Give him 6 years at 240, or 6 years at 204. But you cannot win in Detroit by getting free agents who are at the bottom of the barrel and are trying to rebuild their careers. You just can't do it. And that's what Chris Ilitch wants to pay for. He doesn't want to pay for high-priced talent. See the Red Wings. How much high-priced talent do the Red Wings have? How much non-homegrown high-priced talent do the Red Wings have? Oh, well, Chris, that's just a tribute to the Red Wings minor leagues. No, it's not. No, it's not. That's an indictment on Chris Ilitch and his inability to spend. Mark my words, folks. 2 years from now, if we don't have a lockout, if we don't miss games in 2027, Tarik Skubal is pitching on opening day at Dodger Stadium. as an LA Dodger or possibly as a New York Yankee, because Detroit's not going to sign him to an extension. Chris Ilitch doesn't want to spend the money. Chris Ilitch would rather spend the money on Pineapple Pepsi than he would on getting Tarek Skubal signed to an extension. Oh, yeah, and Scott Boras is his agent, just like Alex Bregman. Chris Ilitch isn't going to spend $210 million over 7 years. He's just not going to do it. He's not going to spend $180 million over 6 years. He choked on $140 million over 6 years. And look at where that's gone. I'm not saying that Alex Bregman is going to be the next Javi Baez, because he's not even close. Javi Baez isn't nearly the player that Alex Bregman is. Never has been, never will be. And Alex Bregman will probably age better than Javi Baez. You can't be sure on that, but it's more than likely. But as it is, he's going to have to eat $74 million of a bad contract with Javi Baez this year. And then you want to try to convince him to pay $180 million over 6 years or $210 over 7 for a guy that's 30 years old? I don't think he's going to do it. I really don't. As much as I love my Detroit Tigers and as much as I would love to see Alex Bregman donning the Old English D on opening day, it ain't going to happen, folks. So just drop that line of thinking. Just drop it. He's not coming to Detroit. He's just not. Chris Ilitch doesn't have Mike Ilitch's stomach for spending money. That's been proven time and time again. Quick announcement about the show. You are listening to the 5th highest rated Detroit Tigers podcast as rated by Feedspot.com. We are the number 1 independently produced podcast as rated by Feedspot.com. The 61st overall podcast in Detroit about the city of Detroit, about Detroit sports, Detroit food, Detroit whatever. We're number 61 as rated by Feedspot.com. So there you go. I'll just get my flowers there. My wife is instrumental in that, even though she really wishes that I wouldn't have started this podcast, especially when it comes to talking about shortstops. And also Nick Janik, owner of HKC Radio. He actually got behind me and said, look, dude, you should do this because I think it'll make you a better producer. I think it'll just be something that you'll enjoy. I think you'll be good at it. Thanks, Nick. I appreciate it. Thanks, Tammy. I appreciate it. And Tammy, I love you. Nick, I don't so much, but that's okay. We're guys. We don't have to love each other. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can at Podcast Tigers on Twitter, at TB Podcast, at tweezcake.social on Mastodon. You can email the show, tigersbaseballpodcast at gmail.com. It's the world's longest email address. I'm proud of it. Until next time, which will be Sunday, February 23rd, 2025, when season 5 starts. We're talking about spring training games. I'm Chris Schulte. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thank you so much. Go Tigers.